husband who's got a
I'm
interesting
scared to talk about Kamala Harris. I'll let you have that one.
No, she's a witch, and she is a corrupt witch. She's been corrupt her whole life, and she fucked her way to the top.
Oh, Lord.
They used to detail this witch in the LA Times with her sexual escapades. She's fucked damn near everybody trying to get up. She used to be a frat hoe when she was at Howard. And she ain't black. You know
I ain't
what
got
she
to do with
is?
this, Miss Harris.
No, I mean, well, don't, but she's
I don't know. I'm just listening.
Well, here's the thing. I actually met her father in Jamaica. I was the guest, sat at the governor general's table, and he was a professor.
Okay.
And he represents as a Hindu Brahmin. He admittedly has some Irish in him. All right. The person that Kamala Harris is saying is her black great-grandmother is, in fact, according to Daddy, in an article he wrote, which has now been cleaned up on the online edition of that magazine, was a Hindu house servant, not a black woman. So her mother is listed on her birth certificate as Caucasian, even though she's dark. But she's a Hindu Brahmin Tamil caste. Now, interestingly, do you know what the anthropological name is for what Kamala Harris and her parents are?
No, sir.
Indo hyphen Aryan. See, they are the original Aryans, but Adolf Hitler and his boys told a big lie. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryans from the far north did not exist, never existed. They were the dark to swarthy to paper bag brown, dark-eyed, dark, coarse-haired Indo-Aryans from India. Those actually settled Germany, and some other people came in from the steppes that lightened everything up a bit. So that lie is being told. So you get the Aryan Brotherhood, the Aryan Nation. What's going on is the Aryans they claim to be one with look like Queen Harris. You know, I guess what she did is, LA Times ranked her out. I was out in LA, when she was really
I see this article.
Before that, she got out and they ran a thing that when she went to law school, Willie Brown, that was his mistress. They used to have guards.
I heard about that, though.
Where they had one I loved. It was a scene, Willie Brown sitting behind a desk with his tongue hang out, and Kamala is raising up after doing him, And they ran this thing where he got her a job with a medical supply company that did business with the city of San Francisco. He got her a gig for 15 hours a week for $72,000 a year. And you have to understand that was 35 years ago. And then when they carried a thing where she moved up to 20 hours a week, she getting paid $120,000 for a part-time gig, and he bought her a 750i BMW. She was earning that. So then she had this thing where she was trying to get on with this big firm. They wouldn't hire her, so she started screwing one of your buddies, an NBA player who was their biggest client. So she got hired. So then they ran a scandal sheet on her where she was trying to get on with the DA's office, so she started screwing the deputy chief DA to get on. So
I will not be shamed out of discussing this by people who say it's slut shaming or it's not relevant. It is relevant when a young candidate tries to sleep her way into politics and into power. And that is what it appears Kamala Harris did when she was a young political aspirant in San Francisco, when she had an affair with a man 30 years older than she was. She was 29 to 30 and he was 60, Willie Brown, who was like the godfather of San Francisco politics and very well known. And sure enough, that relationship paid dividends for her in more ways than one.
That's right, Megan. As you noted yesterday, it's completely fair game to talk about Willie Brown. It's how Kamala Harris went from a relatively unknown Alameda County prosecutor to the forefront of San Francisco social life and politics. Willie Brown was the most powerful politician in California when Kamala Harris started dating him. And he also gave her a number of positions. We're talking about $400,000 back in the 1990s. That's almost $800,000 in today's money. He appointed her to those positions that paid her lucratively. He gave her the keys to a BMW, and he went around the most powerful and most wealthy circles of San Francisco and California politics with Kamala Harris on his arm, opening up the doors to her professional and political future.
So it was back when, again, she was 30 years old. He was at the time Democratic Speaker of the California State Assembly, quoting here from a Washington Examiner piece, which is very good. The position that he gave her on the California Medical Assistance Commission in 1994 paid at that time over $70,000 a year, which is about $120,000 in current money. And she served on the board until 1998, so about 4 years. That medical commission met twice a month. So for 2 meetings a month, she was getting the equivalent of $120,000. And you know why Democrats in San Francisco were mad about it? It wasn't because she wasn't qualified, which she wasn't. It was because those positions are supposed to be saved for only the most prized Democrats who Willie Brown really owed favors to, who did really, amazing things to keep Willie Brown in power. But instead, he gave one to his lover. He was, by the way, still married, though he was reportedly estranged from his wife for a long time. This was technically an extramarital relationship. And they were mad that he gave one of his choice grifting positions, not to somebody who'd done a lot for Democratic politicians, but to Kamala Harris. And not just that, there was another one. He gave her a second position as well, which was basically the same kind of deal, where he just gave her an appointment. She reeked in tons of money, and boom, Bob's your uncle. She was off to the races in Dem politics. And then Willie Brown is on record as saying, I also then helped her with her next big position, which was becoming San Francisco DA.
Right. When she ran for district attorney, they had broken up. Willie Brown, as soon as he ran and won the San Francisco mayor election, he broke up with Kamala. And then, Kamala was there for the victory party. But by the time the inauguration hit, his estranged wife reappeared to be holding the Bible while he took the oath of office. And Kamala was kind of pushed aside. But Willie Brown didn't forget her. When Kamala decided to run for district attorney of San Francisco, he was there quietly nudging all of his wealthy donors and powerful connections to help her out. Him and Terrence Hollinan, the existing district attorney, were not friends anymore. They had kind of had an ugly clash. And Kamala Harris likewise tried to overthrow Hollinan's second in command, but failed miserably. And so she ended up leaving the office to kind of plot her revenge. So Willie Brown was definitely there behind the scenes, but Kamala Harris did as much as she could before the election to distance herself from Willie Brown. At one point, doing a very long interview with San Francisco magazine, throwing him under the bus entirely, saying, Willie Brown's career is over. He's done. Hello. My turn is here. It's Kamala Harris. Sounds really familiar, Megan, compared to what just happened last weekend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole Democratic Party is going to be stepping all over Joe Biden momentarily. He's going to get his weekend in the sun about what a lion he is. And then as soon as they realize that they can blame everything on him and take it off of Kamala, that's what they're going to do. Every inflation number you've seen, it's all his fault. She didn't touch it. She was just a lowly vice president. What was she supposed to do? But talk to me a little bit about her background, because if she rose in San Francisco and then California, right, as the attorney general, and then became a U.S. senator from California, all she's had to do is compete, for the most part, I know there's some exceptions, against other liberals, right? Like, has she ever had to compete against a bull, like Donald Trump, like the silverback gorilla, like Donald Trump, Republican versus Dem? It's on. I realized that she ran as the vice president, but she wasn't the chief. That was really Joe Biden's fight.
Well, the interesting race is when she ran against Steve Cooley for the attorney general position in 2010. Cooley was a relatively sensible law and order Republican. from Los Angeles, and really the last meaningful Republican in California politics. And even it was a big year for Democrats. They won by double digits for California Democrats. But Kamala Harris really struggled against Steve Cooley and barely edged out a victory. It looked like the night of the election that she had lost. And lo and behold, weeks later, they did recounts and recounted all the rest of the votes, and she just barely squeaked off a victory. It was really close, and you can definitely look at that campaign and see that, you know, maybe she will be competitive in this race against Donald Trump as well, but it's hard to see that happening.
Some are now trying to excuse her awkwardness, repeated and everywhere, as she lost her footing as vice president and didn't have the confidence required to really be herself, which I guess is this secret version of charming. Is there anything in her past that would shed light on what's true about her? Has she always been awkward like this, with the weird laughing and the inappropriate jokes and every time the failed attempts at profundity?
Yeah, a lot of it's the product of being a California politician, right? When you're a California Democrat, all you have to do is impress the donors, impress the political power brokers, and kind of show up and demand a seat at the table. Willie Brown taught her how to do that. So she did have some level of that with the top donors, you know, but she never really connected with the California people. But as we've shown earlier, you don't necessarily need to convince voters. You just need to convince the Democratic Party, and everything will fall in line for you pretty well. So
Boy,
what's
that pattern repeated itself.
Her,
Sorry, keep going, Charlie.
Yeah, and so the same thing happened when she ran for Senate. You know, she's a very good candidate. She's very disciplined. She loves the sort of the knife fighting and the brawling. She's on the record saying she loves California politics because it's a real fight. So she is a sort of a ruthless politician, a ruthless campaigner. But after taking office, there's definitely a drop down. Once you actually have to do the job, she never seemed to take it seriously and spent more time planning for her next job. That's kind of what we saw in the first 3 years of her vice president. She really was risk averse, didn't seem to be interested in the job she had, but more interested in protecting her own political brand for the future. And I think when a politician hits that stage, the early stage of actually having to do the job, I think that's when they tend to lose their footing and stumble. And I think that's what Kamala Harris ended up looking like. And that's why her staff kind of abandoned her, because she wasn't serious about the office she was holding. And she was more interested in preparing herself to run for president.
Yeah, the reports were that she would fail to read the briefing materials that she was given by the staff, and then she would lash out at the staff for her not knowing information. And meanwhile, she just refused to do her homework. This wasn't in right-wing blogs that just hated Kamala Harris. This was reported even in the mainstream about her terrible behavior as vice president. But now, okay, so we're one day into her likely being the Democratic nominee. She does this first appearance yesterday. And this line, this soundbite, by now, you've seen it, our audience has heard it. It's everywhere. The Democrats are like, you go, girl. Because of this, it's SOT 4.
Before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Never in a million years I would have thought that they were going to charge me for sales murder. I never talked to no detective, no police officer, no DA, nobody.
Just arrested and then charged.
Arrested and charged, that's it.
Was the first time you saw Kamala Harris in person the day that the verdict was issued?
She showed up at the two most pivotal times in this first trial and me being convicted and me being sentenced. She wanted to be present for a celebration of a conviction.
That's what it felt like, a celebration?
A celebration, that's what it felt like. The reactions I get when I tell people my story is, they say it's the worst nightmare. You know, it's the closest thing to dying.
Jamal, I'm going to read you a quote real quick. The job of a progressive prosecutor is to look out for those overlooked, to speak up for those whose voices aren't being heard, to see and address the causes of crime, not just their consequences, and to shine a light on the inequality and unfairness that lead to injustice. It is to recognize that not everyone needs punishment, that what many need, quite obviously, is help. Kamala Harris wrote that in her book, The Truths We Hold. Does that sound consistent with the with the brand of justice that you saw administered by offices that she was running?
It definitely sounds like Kamala Harris right now as a senator. But at the time of her being the head district attorney of San Francisco, that is almost polar opposite of what I felt and what our community felt in San Francisco.
So Jamal, where are we?
Right now we are in Sunnydale Projects, where I was born and raised at. Now, this isn't a place that you'll want to bring outsiders into, and a place that they don't want to go. This ain't a place that feels comfortable. It feels like you might get robbed, you might get shot.
The police were keeping files on you, and your brothers, and other people who were living in Sunnydale from a very young age.
They already had me labeled because I'm in this community as a potential gang member, potential killer, potential drug dealer. You gotta wake up to the fact that, you know, things are set up against us.
There is a conspiracy.
Yes.
It happened to you.
Exactly.
It's proven in court.
Absolutely. Places like this have been developed for predominantly African-American people to not be able to succeed beyond it.
Yeah. What did you know about Kamala Harris? What did you know about San Francisco having a black DA?
Nobody in the hood ever worried or focused on the DA position in general, but people did focus on it just a tad bit, that it was black, and feeling like, okay, this black lady in office, Kamala Harris, she was gonna understand where we come from, you know, and have more of a sympathetic way of prosecuting people that come from our communities who have been plagued with no opportunities. This is Hunter's Point, where these different projects and communities used to really war with each other.
Jamal, in July 2007, what's going on in your life at that point?
I had recently just came off of I Love New York, and also that's when my friend Sel Kuka got killed.
More than a year goes by and no one's been arrested in the case. You hadn't even been questioned.
Haven't even been questioned, no. The police was still, you know, trying to get a conviction by all means necessary. When I was arrested for it, the community knew I didn't do it. And it was here we go again. See, this is why we don't trust, you know, law enforcement, because it gets to a point where somebody who didn't do something goes to jail for it. I don't have no history of crime. What's up, boy? I have a history of being around in the community, but that doesn't mean that I'm a suspect. I'm like, oh man, I'll be out within 72 hours. They're gonna figure this out. They're gonna clear this up.
And then when you found out what the evidence was that they supposedly had you on, there wasn't much there. Can you describe what it was?
They had a woman saying that she seen me kill Sel. The second witness that they had really wasn't a witness at all. She said anything that the police officers wanted her to say, and they said that her recollection of the events was extremely credible. So that's what ultimately got the arrest warrant.
The District Attorney of San Francisco, Kamala Harris, appeared in the courtroom during your trial twice.
Yeah, the 2 times that Kamala Harris showed up to my trial was when I got convicted, and also when they laid down the sentencing.
When you saw her on the day that the verdict was handed down, did you take that as a bad sign?
It felt to me that she was well aware about my case, and she was there to set her presence, almost take pride in getting a conviction. When I put in my appeal, the people that's fighting against my appeal to keep the conviction is the Attorney General office. I learned it reading, their reply to my appeal, and you see Kamala Harris' name at the bottom. And now it's starting to feel a little personal.
When you win the $13.1 million, it's a massive settlement. Did you feel like that was enough?
There's not an amount that could get back those 7 years. That 6.5 years that I spent in prison. But instead of me coming home feeling like I was a victim, I wanted to prove that I'm a survivor, and I will not let my story go unheard. I'm not necessarily saying I'm looking for an apology, but some acknowledgement from her that she could have messed up will be, of course, that'd be huge. You could have made some mistakes. You could have missed some things. For me, it was a big miss. I had life in prison. I've met people in prison that was wrongfully convicted. I want my story to be out to provoke reform ultimately. Beyond that, I want to be able to be who I want to be. I'm an actor, I'm a musician, I'm a father. I'm more than this person that was framed. I'm more than this person that was wrongfully convicted.
Moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist. During Women's History Month, we celebrate and we honor the women who made history. The significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time. It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. That little girl was me.
Years before presidential candidate Kamala Harris made waves at the Democratic debates, she got her first taste of the limelight when she dated talk show host Montel Williams. In this just unearthed video, they can be seen walking the red carpet at the 8th annual Race to Erase MS Gala in Los Angeles. The year was 2001. Harris was 36 years old. At the time, Harris was an under-the-radar lawyer in San Francisco. She and Montel Williams were accompanied on the red carpet by the TV host's daughter, Ashley. Williams is now confirming the long-forgotten relationship, saying, "Kamala Harris and I briefly dated about 20 years ago when we were both single. So what? I have great respect for Senator Harris." Harris is now married to lawyer Douglas Emhoff. Harris, considered a top-tier presidential contender, has not commented about her short-lived romance with Montel Williams.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?